So if you ever use any type of app deployment service like, I don't know, Vercel or DigitalOcean, Netlify, one thing that you'll notice is that you can deploy new versions of your code without your users experiencing downtime. So one thing I want to walk you through in this video is how do they achieve that? And I'm assuming the way they achieve that is doing something called a blue-green deployment. And this is going to be useful if you're actually like dealing with trying to set up your own infrastructure in like Amazon or Azure. Maybe you have to actually like manage your own VMs. But in most cases, if you're using a pre-existing service or using like Kubernetes, you don't have to worry about this stuff. So let's pretend like you have users, and those users are interacting with like a UI. They're using their web browser to kind of use your UI, and that UI makes API requests to, we'll just say we have a node/express server, and we'll say v1. Okay, so these users are making requests, and then at some point you're gonna have to deploy a new version to this machine, right? Let's just pretend that there's a VM here. The way that typically works is you would have to basically SSH into this machine. You would have to take this node offline, so just stop it. And then you'd have to somehow get a new version of your software, let's just say v2, into that machine, right? So you can do like a secure copy. If you have Git on this machine, you can do a Git pull. And now that the new version of the software is on the machine itself, you can turn the machine back online. Simple enough. But during this whole time, there is going to be some downtime for users, right? Users are going to have, depending on how fast this is, obviously you probably want to have scripts that automate this. Users are going to experience some downtime. So what can you do to prevent systems from having downtime or prevent APIs from going down for that short period when you need to upgrade versions? So this is where something called blue-green deployments comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and put this VM as your blue VM. And I'm going to go ahead and clone all this and make another color over here. I'm going to make it green. Okay. And let's just go ahead and make the same scenario. We got V1 over here. And this one, for right now, it doesn't even have anything on it. So now in this scenario, you have two VMs. One is going to be running version 1 of your software, and the other one is something that you create before you need to do a deployment, or these could just be kind of sitting around always live in case you want to like do a rollback. But basically there's a VM here that allows you to deploy a new version. So what we're going to do is just to visualize this, again, we have like a v2 package that needs to be deployed from a developer. He's like, hey, I'm going to get this v2 package deployed here instead. So let's just go ahead and copy this. He's going to go ahead and install the node version 2. He's going to run it. And now you have an accessible server that your users could potentially hit. But now the problem is, how do you get all these users who are kind of hitting this API over here? How do you move them to hit this new machine that has like the latest version of your code? So what typically happens is you would have a machine that sits in front of these, right? So I could do like a load balancer, or if you're using like Route 53 in Amazon, you can actually have some rules set up to transfer traffic based on different rules. So now instead, your users are hitting your like API. So I'll say like HTTPS api.myexampleapp.com, example.com. And the load balancer is actually sitting in front of these two VMs. This again could live on its own VM, or you could use an existing like load balancer in AWS. They have like application load balancers. They have other types of load balancers as well. But as the user is clicking through the UI, the requests hit the load balancer, and the load balancer determines what machine it needs to route traffic to. So now it's time to basically get all these users over to this new VM. So typically you have like some type of script or automation that is, going to tell the load balancer that, hey, start switching all the users over to the new traffic. So now seamlessly, any user who is, previously hitting V1 would still allow the request to kind of finish through. But now all new traffic is going to hit this new version of your code, right? And you don't have any downtime for your users. So hopefully you understand like the benefits of why you can do this, but there's also more benefits I want to talk about. Okay, so let's actually talk about another really good benefit of blue-green deployments. If you keep this old server around and just let it run, if for whatever reason there's tons of bugs that happen on V2, you can simply just go back here and just tell it to roll back. Okay, and now your users are going to be moved back to the old version. Any errors that they saw are going to go away, and they're going to use the old version of the app. This is easier said than done because obviously, depending on the database setup, like you might have done database migrations and your schema might be different. Sometimes you can't just roll back because then the code over here isn't really aware of the database changes. And so it's going to be connecting to a database that has like new schemas, and you're going to have a lot of issues. But this is something that you could do depending on what you change in your database. Go ahead and put database here just to kind of show that. So again, both of these servers are kind of like hooked up to the same database, and when they get a request, they're going to fetch and write to that database and send that data back. Okay, so that's the second benefit, right? You can do a rollback sometimes, and the first benefit obviously is you get no downtime to switch users over. So a third thing I want to kind of mention is there's something called a Canary deployment, where instead of basically just doing a hard switch over, you slowly trickle users over into the new system, right? So you'll have like, you'll send 5% of users over to this new system, and you'll keep 95 of the existing users using the old blue color, okay? And then you have automation set up that checks, are there errors on green? Okay, so you basically have logging set up. Observability is the key word that you're looking for. But if errors happen, you basically have automation. But you have automation that basically kicks this back down to 0, and all your users will be going back to the old color because we've detected that there's actually tons of errors happening as you slowly start trickling users over. But that's the worst case scenario. If everything goes good, which hopefully it does, you'll get all the users over to the new traffic. And if there are no errors, you could potentially try to save money for your organization to basically delete this old VM and not have to have it laying around, right? Because again, if you're using like cloud services, these things are super easy to spin up and spin down and then provision and have like running servers in them. So that's one approach you can do. That's all I really wanted to cover in this video. I hope this was kind of a good introduction to like more advanced topics in computer science and like deployments. And then honestly, it's not something that you really have to worry about too much. If you're working on a small scale project and you're deploying to these existing cloud services that basically host your application for you, right? But it's good to keep that in mind because this is how some of the stuff works under the hood. All right, like always, I got a Discord channel. You guys are welcome to join if you just want to find a place to talk to some other developers or just hang out. And other than that, have a good day and happy coding.